welcome to episode number 116 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Now, hey, I'm super excited today because I have my new friend Kai Fuentes joining me on the podcast. I feel a little behind the times because everybody knows Kai, but now I finally know Kai, so I'm in the cool crowd now. So, what do you know? So, something pretty interesting about Kai. Now, she is a second generation market researcher, which is cool. So, I hope we talk about that today. But she has been president and CEO of Ebony Marketing Systems, the company she founded for over 22 years now. Is that right? That's quite a good run.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Yes, super cool. But something that most people don't know about Kai, I'm guessing, is that, hey, when the workday is done, she is occasionally slipping out to the comedy club and doing some stand-up comedy. Now, that is so awesome. So I can't wait to talk about all that and more on today's podcast. Welcome to the show, Kai.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, believe me, I'm super happy to have you here. I hear your name all over the place. You're always at the conferences, and can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh, do you know Kai Fuentes? She should be on your podcast." So here we are. So
That's
excited.
very sweet. Yeah, and I'm honored to be here. I've listened to several episodes and I'm a real fan. So feel
Good. I'm glad
special
to
this
hear it.
morning. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Okay, so before we get started, in the last episode, I introduced something called Magic Mind here. It's a really cool productivity shot that I've been taking. It's got all these really neat natural ingredients that my doctor says I should have, but sometimes I need that energy boost, all that good stuff. And so I'm going to take this shot here before we start talking on the podcast. And if this is something you're interested in trying, you can go to magicmind.com/rock and roll. Use the code rock and roll 20 to get yourself a nice discount on a one-time purchase or a subscription. But we'll get started just as soon as I go down the hatch with this guy.
All right. Salute.
Salud. All right.
Mm.
Good stuff. Ready to roll. Okay, Kai, now, second generation market researcher. This is really cool. Tell me that whole story, how you got into market research, and I would love to hear a bit about what you're doing nowadays at Ebony Marketing Systems.
Yeah. So my start was I was born in the industry. My mom started a market research company when she was pregnant with me. She started off as an interviewer working for other field services, and she was like,
Yeah,
"This is something that I want to do." And she was a teacher at the time, and
yeah,
she was like, "I want to own my own business and do this whole life." And she
yeah.
did. And I was, I tease all the time that I was like born on a survey, right? So like growing up, there were surveys all over, just paper all over the house. I have so many pictures of me as a baby sitting on surveys, or you know, my parents didn't read bedtime stories to me, but I read like final reports and surveys and all the things.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, my earliest memory of, being in the industry is probably when I was 5 or 6, and my parents had different mall locations.
Yeah,
And instead of being at the playground on a Saturday, I was in the mall with my parents. And we were all working with my sister side by side.
yeah,
And I remember one of the things to keep me busy, there was no iPads or anything then, right? So one of the things to keep me busy was I was the stapler person, and I would staple surveys at
yeah,
5, or bring an interviewer an eraser, or
yeah,
photocopy and screw it up and all these things. And so my earliest memories are being in the field. And then I started intercepting.
yeah,
And that was my side gig on the weekends. I would intercept, bring a respondent back to the mall location, interview them,
yeah.
and pay them the incentive, like the whole thing. I did my first one at 11, and it was a huge deal. Yeah,
Who wouldn't
it's
do the survey when you've got this cute 11-year-old kid coming up to you trying to recruit you to do something for
exact
yogurt or whatever?
exactly. I was a secret weapon. I was able to fill quotas. And it was fun. And I was a shy kid, believe it or
Yeah,
not. Like nobody ever believes that the core of me is really the shy person. Nobody
Sure.
ever believes that, but market research created this person that you see today, this outgoing person, because I had to intercept people at a young age. So I had to learn to speak to almost everybody and not be
Right.
afraid to talk and not be afraid to ask questions at a young age. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a real interesting start. And I'm grateful for it all because I pull on some of those memories, like even now, like as an adult later on, like and I'm running the business. And I
Yeah.
there's times I pull on those childhood memories. It's fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Now, was there ever a time, was this just preordained and you knew even as a kid, hey, I'm going to do the same thing when I grow up? Or was there something else that you considered along the way?
Yeah, so I went to nursing school. I thought that I was going to be a nurse. And
Right.
then I went to nursing school and then realized that I don't like the sight of blood. Like
Yeah.
I can't. So I went through all of my clinical, no, not clinical. I went through all my training,
Okay.
like and then for the first day of the clinicals, they sent me to the hospital and they were like, okay, well, you're going to start doing your clinicals. And Matt, I was in the hospital like, nah, this ain't for me. Like I have to go take blood pressure and do all the no, absolutely not. So I left.
Oh, you and me both. I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah, shout out to all the nurses and people who
Big
work
time.
in the health industry and doctors who do that. It's not an easy job. So realized that wasn't for me. And then went into social work for a very brief time.
Okay.
But research was always in the background. It's always been such a core of who I am.
Sure.
Um, and then I think I realized, no, I was born into this. Let me fulfill my destiny. I feel like I'm fulfilling my destiny in a weird way.
Yeah, I love that. So, tell us a little bit about what Ebony Marketing Systems does.
Yeah, so as a market research brat, I'm just piggybacking on what my mom and dad created and
Mhm.
carrying out their legacy of conducting multicultural research.
Right.
We've always done that.
Right.
We were the first when my parents started, we were the first ones to do work in Spanish. My mom is from Costa Rica, so she's a
Ah,
native.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
Spanish
great.
is her first language. Yeah. Um, my Spanish is fair to Midland, but if we're in a Spanish speaking country, we won't starve. I can tell you where the bathroom is and we'll have a good time. But other than that, I can't do a group in Spanish. So we do multicultural research too, focus group surveys, and we do a lot of field work. So carrying that legacy of the field,
Sure.
we do a lot of work, with transit companies where we're out in the field.
Yeah.
We also do a lot of telephone interviewing in language. So in AAPI languages, in Spanish,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, so we cover the gamut of languages and of field work and all things qualitative.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I love it. Love to hear it. So, now you mentioned that you're kind of a shy kid growing up and that you've got shyness at the core of you. How does that square with becoming a stand-up comic? So let's hear about comedy.
Yeah, so I want to challenge myself, and I
Yeah.
do two things every year that I say that scares the life out of me.
Right.
Because if you're not afraid, then you're not growing. And then you don't have, you can't use your toolkit, you
Right.
know, on what it means to stretch. So I'm a huge fan of stand-up comedy, always have been.
Yeah.
Um, I saw Raw Eddie Murphy's Raw at a
Yeah.
very young age,
Yeah.
VHS. Oh my gosh. And I
Classic.
snuck down. Yeah, it's classic. And the red suit and how he's moving on the stage. I was like, oh, that's amazing. And I was kind of hooked on stand-up comedy ever since. And growing up, I was shy, but I would always do like different voices and
Uh-huh.
stuff, or I would mimic people. And so my sister was really my first audience. So we would be in bed, or we had bunk beds when we lived in Queens,
Yeah.
and I would have her cracking up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my parents would say, girls, quiet down, quiet down. But I would, make up all these voices and all these things. And so I've always been a fan of stand-up comedy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So this year, one of my challenges was to try stand-up. And I'm really enjoying it. And I realized that it's very similar to qualitative research. There is a
Interesting.
connection, you know? There is a connection. And the connection is, as qualitative researchers, we tell stories. That's what we
Mhm.
do.
Right.
Our final report is really the story and the journey. All I'm doing is just adding a little stank to it, adding a little comedy to it.
Yeah.
And I'm finding the funny in these stories. And things are really funny, right? But it depends on how you twist them and spin them and
Right.
and all the things. And what I love about comedy too is it's challenging me to work with, you know, my body, facial expressions, all the
Right.
things.
Hmm.
So it's also helped me in public speaking, and it's also helped me in focus groups as well. So
Yeah.
it's been checking many boxes for me, and um, it's super scary though because it's just you and that microphone. That's
Yeah.
it. You have no slides, no nothing. It's you, your mic, and the stories.
Yeah, I just have such mad respect for people that do stand-up comedy because the two things. One is it's one thing to, have your sister who just loves your jokes and just can't get enough of it. Then to switch that to, some faces in a room that you've never seen before that are just waiting for you to make them laugh. But for me, playing in a band, especially drums, I just sit in the back, right? If we're terrible, I'm going to blame it on somebody else.
Yeah,
So the pressure's off. But if you're a comic and like you said, it's just you and the microphone, and if nobody's laughing, you can't look behind you or blame it on somebody else. It's got to be just nerve-wracking.
yeah. And in the moments of uncomfortability is where I was learning to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Because when I started, and people still aren't laughing at some of my jokes, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
when I started my first day, nobody laughed. Like literally nobody laughed. And I'm
Oh,
like, okay, all right. So what am I gonna do in this moment?
pressure.
Nobody's laughing. And I just had to stand true in who I was.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm here in this moment, and this is super embarrassing.
Yeah. But then of course it's interesting too because you get immediate feedback. It doesn't maybe help you that night, but I would imagine you just get better and better. You're like, okay, they didn't laugh at this. I'm gonna try it a little different. Oh, okay, I'm getting a positive response.
Exactly. And yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, it's just been such a learning process, experience, journey, all of the things. I'm really enjoying myself. And I'm gonna continue with the class again. We're on hiatus now, but I'm gonna continue in September because
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying myself and I'm stretching and I'm growing and I'm learning.
yeah,
And yeah, it's great to have immediate feedback, but then that can also throw you off too, right? So it's like,
yeah,
how do you deal with all those things?
yeah.
Um, and sometimes it's just a simplicity of a nuance of how you say it. It's
Hmm.
not what you say, it's also how you deliver it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I've had some jokes where that have not landed, but then I tried a different way to deliver it in
Right.
terms of my tonation, my body language, my voice, how
Yeah.
I'm using my voice, all those things. And yeah, so sometimes it can land with just a simple twist.
Yeah. Well, I gotta tell you, I mean, it takes guts, so I'm mighty impressed. I don't have the guts to do it. I just don't.
You probably do. You probably do. And if you're a fan, you should certainly give it a shot. You should certainly give it a shot.
We'll see. We'll see. I'll see if I can get over the hump. Okay. Now back to insights, Kai. Now you've been doing this thing for your whole career.
Yeah.
So much has changed in the industry over that time. I'm curious to know from your perspective, as you're sort of looking into the future of insights, what does that look like for you?
All things multicultural.
Yeah.
All things multicultural. Gen Z is the first generation that is more multicultural than not.
Right. Yep.
So the future of research is continuing multiculturalism and
Yeah.
making sure we're asking the right questions to the right people at the right time.
Yeah.
And that's always been my where my heart has lied in this since 5, 6 years old, right? Is
Yeah.
talking to audiences that are underrepresented. And it's so important that we talk that we talk to these audiences, because that's what our country looks like. And so the future of research is what's happening right now, is continuing the multicultural legacy and making sure that all voices are heard.
Yeah. It feels like something like 15 years ago, it felt like multicultural research all of a sudden became kind of a trend. Like all of a sudden, every client was asking about it. We need to make sure that we are representing all populations and the work that we're doing. But it kind of died down. But now it just seems like this is the way it is going forward. It's embedded into everything as it should be, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's times where there has been ebbs and flows, but all of my work has been in the multicultural space.
Right.
So for the past, you know, couple of decades,
Yeah.
it's all been multicultural. And that's just the way it's going to be, and it has to be that way, or else
Yeah.
we're not doing research.
Totally.
We're not doing
Absolutely.
accurate research if we're not talking to everybody
Yep.
and including everybody.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be hard if you're talking to the experts like yourself, right?
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years.
Right on. I love it. I love it. Super cool. Okay, so this is a podcast, right, Kai? It's media. Curious to know what kind of media you're consuming. Big, broad question for insight, inspiration, or enjoyment. What is earning your time?
Of course, your podcast.
Ah, wonderful.
Absolutely. There we go. And the Green Book also has a great podcast that I'm a fan of as well. So
Yeah.
between those two, during the day, I spend a lot of time listening to music, but when I'm cleaning up the kitchen or like doing a little laundry, I am listening to either the Green Books podcast or your podcast.
Oh, cool. It's great to hear. Yeah, I really got hooked on that Friday 11 a.m. One that they do, Lenny and Karen. They do
It's
that live.
fire, isn't it?
Uh,
It's
I'm blanking on the name. Sorry, Lenny. Sorry, Karen. But
I
it's
know,
11
I
a.m.
know.
11 a.m. live on LinkedIn. 11 a.m. Central, that is. Live on LinkedIn, and I'm totally hooked on it. So that's a great podcast.
They do a great job. It's really fire.
Okay. Um, great. All right, Kai. This is the big question. It is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast after all. So we've got to talk music. Um,
Yeah.
so you're stranded on a desert island, Kai. You have three records of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are they?
Oh my goodness. This question gives me anxiety because I'm such a music lover and I want to take it all with me. But stranded on a desert island. Okay, so one, Stevie Wonder,
Oh,
um,
yes.
but then it's like which one, right?
Yeah.
So I would probably have to say Inner Visions. Love
Okay.
that album.
Yeah.
It's an amazing album. Everything about it from beginning to end. Um, what's another one? Okay, of course, shout out to Erica Badu, my
Yeah.
favorite, one of my favorite artists. Baduism, that dropped in '95, the live album.
Yeah.
So good how she's able to riff in her band and how they're able to hang with her, and as she goes to her own creative journey. That's amazing. So I've got to
Yes.
have Ibadu with me.
Love that too.
And let's see, to my New York City roots, I would say Raekwon from Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
Only built for Cuban Link. I love that album.
Yeah.
Parental advisory, by the way, but every track is fire. Every track. So I
I
would probably have to have those three with me.
I think those choices are amazing. Stevie Wonder is a new first time mention, I think, on the podcast.
Really?
Yep, we have had Wu-Tang, we've had Erica Badu, but Stevie Wonder, surprisingly, it's taken 116 episodes to get Stevie Wonder on there.
Get out. I mean,
Yeah,
Stevie is classic.
absolutely. That beautiful voice is just
Yes.
incomparable. I
I was
thought at
telling you.
first you were dropping some LL Cool J lyrics, so I didn't know if we might hear some Cool J in there, but you've got three really good choices. I love it. I love it. Super cool. Kai, this has been an awesome chat. I want to remind our listeners real quick, if you're interested in this Magic Mind, it's a really cool productivity shot. It works for me. Go to magicmind.com/rock and roll. Use the code rock and roll 20 for a nice discount. But Kai, I don't know when I'm going to see you next, but I hope I do see you soon so we can meet and chat in person. Love to continue some of these conversation threads in a little bit more depth. So let's definitely talk soon and rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Thanks for having me.